Hello everyone, welcome to Taylor Time with your host Taylor Pouchet. Today we will be making a cake that looks like a pizza. I'm sure you probably haven't heard of that in too many places, but you're gonna hear about it today because we're gonna make one and it's gonna be super delicious and it's gonna look just like pizza. So to get started, I'm gonna make my vanilla batter. This is a very simple recipe, and I'm gonna cut my normal recipe in half so that way we don't have too much batter because our pizza tin is pretty thin. So for our ingredients, we have butter, sugar, milk, flour, baking powder, eggs, vanilla extract, and salt. So we can come right over here and take a paddle attachment, our stand mixer, and go ahead and add our butter. And mix that up. We're gonna mix this on about medium speed. And so a quick thing about this recipe is that on Food Network Season 7, we had the Imposter Challenge, and I was challenged with making sushi. So everyone's, or at least most everyone's favorite episode on Food Network for Kids Baking Championship is the Imposter episode. So I thought this would go really well with this show since I was on that show. So now we can add our sugar and sweeten this up. Whoops. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. It's going everywhere. And now while that is mixing, we can take our vanilla extract. This is clear vanilla extract, but it doesn't matter which one you use. The clear one is usually just for bakers who don't want to alter the color of their cake batter, especially if they want a really white cake batter or they're doing different colors. Now, we can stop that for a second and scrape down the sides. Now we can take our eggs and crack these into our container. Cracking these into a container is really good because you make sure you don't get any egg shells in your batter. Go ahead and add our eggs one at a time. And now we can go ahead and incorporate our last egg. And so while that is mixing, we can go ahead and get a head start on our flour mixture. So we have our flour, and we're going to add our baking powder. Now we can add our salt and give that a good stir. Right, and now we can alternate our dry and wet ingredients. Gonna add a little bit of our flour. And let that mix. And now once that's pretty mixed in, we're gonna add our milk now. I'm just gonna add a little bit of this. Now we can add some more of our flour. Just a little side note, we're going to add the flour in thirds and we're going to add the milk in halves. Just another good stir. And we can add the rest of our milk. But again, very slowly because it will splash. And now, last but not least, we can add the rest of our flour. And give this one last good stir. Now we can shut this off. And I'm going to give it one last good mix by hand. This is just to make sure everything is combined and to also make sure that we don't overmix our batter, because if you overmix it, the gluten in the flour will be overworked and you'll have a super tough, dry cake, and that's not very good. And now I'm going to scrape down the sides while also folding the mixture. All right, and once your batter looks sort of like this, pretty smooth and velvety, no clumps or lumps or bumps, we can put it in a real pizza tin. Yes, a real pizza tin. This is going to make it super authentic, and we can put it in the oven at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes, but make sure to check on it because it is very, very thin and it will bake very fast. So once your pizza pie is nice and baked and cooled, this is what it should look like. Very, very nice and perfect to decorate. Okay, so now we can get to the decorating part. This is my favorite part, as you should know. This right here is called fondant, and this is actually the first time I've used it on the show. So this is a first. Fondant is like a sugar paste mixture, and we're going to use the fact that it's sugar. We're going to take advantage of the fact that it's sugar later, and we're going to brulee this and make it really look like a pizza. But fondant can be molded into basically anything. I use it to cover cakes. I use it to make little fondant toppers on cakes. I use it to make little characters or figurines. It can be used for anything. And you might notice I'm putting on gloves because fondant can get very, very sticky since it is sugar. And since this is dyed fondant, the food coloring will get all over your hands. Trust me, I've been there before, and I've went to school with pink and green hands and blue hands, and it's just like, what on earth? But this fondant is dyed with ivory food color. It's just to make it look a little bit more realistic instead of bright white crust, because you want your crust on your pizza to be nice and baked. We want to give it the effect that our pizza is baked. And now I'm just going to knead my fondant. I'm stretching it out as I knead it so that way it gets softer a lot faster. If your fondant is especially tough, you can add a little bit of shortening, not butter. Butter is way too oily and it has all sorts of milk and dairy in it. But you want to use shortening that's 100% oil and work a little bit of it at a time. And if your fondant is too sticky, you can add a little bit of cornstarch or powdered sugar. All right, so we're going to take our fondant, and the way that we're going to decorate this is you can take a clump of fondant and roll it into a long snake. And usually I would use some sort of water or piping gel to really adhere my fondant to my pizza cake. But since, again, a little sneak peek, it's going to be bruleed and torched, so the fondant is already going to get pretty sticky and pretty melty. So we really don't need to do anything to it now. You can just press it onto your cake, and I'm going to use my fingers to add a little bit of texture and create a little bit of a lip around the fondant. You want to make it look like an authentic, homemade Italian pizza. You want to have all the lumps and bumps in there. Don't try and get too particular or too, don't be too of a perfectionist with this pizza. It's supposed to look rough. And now you want to do that around your entire pizza. This might take me a minute. Also, my parents actually hate, I know I mention my parents a lot, but they actually hate fondant. I can literally eat fondant by itself. I know it sounds disgusting, but it's not that bad. It's really not that bad. But if you're super picky, just when you cut the pizza, just take off the fondant. But if you like fondant, then this is a great pizza for you. Perfect. So now, once you're done, it should look kind of like this. And as you can see, it's not super smooth. It's not supposed to be. So just shove it on there. Well, okay, I'm not gonna say that. But it's not supposed to be perfect. So just put it on there and make it kind of look like it's been baking and bubbling in the oven. So I purposely took my fingers and made little indents and made it look imperfect. That's just what we want. So now we're gonna make this look so much better. And this is also a first on the show because we're gonna be using a torch to make this crust super bubbly, especially since fondant is sugar, like I mentioned before. It'll kind of brulee and get a little bit of browning to it. So I'll be right back. Also, when you're using a torch, please be very careful. And if you're a kid, always have adult supervision. These can be very, very, very dangerous and very hot. You can really burn yourself. So, we're going to take a little cake pan and put it up against our pizza crust. This is just so that when we brulee our crust, we don't burn our cake. So now we can go around. Be very careful. We're going to brown our crust. Ooh, as you can see, it's smoking a little bit. It smells kind of like a marshmallows at a campfire. As you can see, it's bubbling. It looks so good. All right, and now we can put this away. I'm going to lock it to make sure it doesn't accidentally go on or anything. And now here we have our bruleed pizza crust. It looks very, very realistic. I love it so much. And we can move this to the side. Okay, so I'm back and I've got a spoon, and this right here is just some red frosting, red vanilla frosting. And this is some seedless raspberry jam. This is gonna give us a really thick, rich pizza sauce. It's gonna look so good on our pizza and it's gonna taste very, very good. And now we can take a whisk and just whisk this right up. This might take some patience and some muscle. And here we have our delicious, thick, rich pizza sauce. We can bring back our pizza and go ahead and put our sauce on top. Make sure it's mixed really, really well though. We're gonna go ahead and ladle this onto our pizza like a real pizza. I'm gonna go ahead and spoon this on. Now going back to the fact that this is a cake, I'm going to take an offset spatula. This is such a handy tool for decorating cakes. If you really want to get into cake decorating, you need one of these. Not want, need. But we're gonna go back and spread all of our delicious pizza sauce on our pizza. All right, and now we have our pizza sauce on our pizza. I am so excited. Like this already, like even with just the crust, when we were bruleeing the crust, it looked so good. I am so excited for this. So I'm gonna wash my hands really quickly because next we're gonna put cheese on this pizza. Be right back. All right, so we are back with our cheese. As you can see, this bowl looks pretty frozen, but that's because Whoops, that's because it is. This has been in the freezer just to keep this cold, because the way I made my cheese is by using modeling chocolate. And modeling chocolate is very, very easy to make. It only has 2 ingredients, and the only downside about it is that it has to cool for a very long time. So make sure you do this in advance. But I just took the hardened modeling chocolate and I grated it with the grater, and here we have our cheese. And I stuck it in the freezer because, again, this is chocolate, so it will melt. So now what I'm gonna do is I can take my cheese and kind of just break it up on my pizza. And again, I'm going to use gloves because the heat from my hands will melt this. And now I gotta get the rest of this cheese out the bowl. And boom, all of our cheese is on the bowl, but now we're gonna make this cheese melty because this can't be just a frozen pizza. We gotta melt this cheese. This can't be just a frozen pizza. We gotta melt this cheese. So we're gonna bring back the good old torch and brulee this cheese just a little bit, just to get it nice and melty. This is also an important reason why we wanted to make our cheese chocolate, because chocolate melts. Oh yeah! Oh my gosh! Guys, I get so excited and so hyped when a cake looks so good. This looks fantastic. I can spin it around just like a real pizza. It looks so good. So now we're gonna set our pizza aside while we make our toppings. So now we can move on to our toppings. And with this part, you gotta get very creative. So here I have an assortment of candy, as you can see. So I decided to put pepperoni, olives, green bell peppers, red bell peppers, and bacon. You can put anything on this pizza. I like a pepperoni pizza, just a classic pepperoni pizza with extra marinara sauce, extra cheese, a crispy crust. Delicious. But I'm gonna add all these other toppings just because I think it adds character to the pizza. It makes it look that much better. So to make our pepperoni, we're going to take these dried fruit leather strips, and this looks just like pepperoni. So I was like, perfect, this is what I'm gonna use. This is what our pepperoni is gonna be made out of. So to make it that much easier, whoops, I like to stack them and add a little bit of olive oil in between them, just to make sure they don't stick. This is actually avocado oil, just to be a little bit healthier, not like a pizza or a cake, or especially a pizza cake is healthy, but you can use whatever oil. You can use canola oil, you can use olive oil, avocado oil, any kind of oil. Any oil works. And now we can take our cookie cutter and also dip this into our oil. I'm gonna run my finger around it. Get our baker's muscles ready. And push really hard. Make sure it goes all the way through. And just release, press it out, and here you have your pepperoni slices. So for our next topping, I made olives. So I am going to take some black licorice. You can use these long ones, or you can use these little bitty baby ones. Either one is completely fine. I'm going to then take a knife. Be very, very careful with this. Always have adult supervision. And I'm going to cut these into little olive slices. right now these just look like little black licorice circles, but we're gonna make these into olives by taking a piping tip and dipping it into our olive oil. And by testing this many ways, I figured out this is actually the easiest way to do it. So I'm gonna put my licorice piece on top and then press. And here you go, you have a little olive. I'm gonna keep going these last few pieces. And here we have it. Oh, whoops. There we go. And here we have it, our olive pieces. Now do this about 1,000,000 other times and you'll have just enough for your pizza cake. For our next topping, we have red bell peppers. So I'm gonna actually take an even bigger knife, be very careful once again, and I'm gonna grab a paper towel. I'll be right back. So here I have a paper towel. I'm gonna dip it in my olive oil, just a little bit, and coat both sides of the knife, being very, very careful. This is very sharp. To make this 10 times easier, I'm going to just use some little licorice strings. These are red gummies. I'm gonna bunch it up, and then we can take our knife and just simply cut our licorice. Don't try and go super fast if you're not comfortable. Go slow and be careful. As you can see, bunching it up really makes it so much easier rather than cutting every single little strand. You'll be cutting for hours. And cakes already take a long time, so doing it this way is so much easier. All right, and here we have our red bell peppers. Super simple. And now for our green bell peppers, we have the exact same thing, except these are green. You want to use the exact same technique, just chopping, being very careful. Use your oil on your knife to keep it from sticking, and you'll have green bell peppers. Now for our last topping in one of my favorite toppings, we're gonna make some bacon. So these are little red licorice pieces that are twisted so they look kind of like bacon. And now I'm gonna be very, very careful and cut these with my knife and slice them into thin slices. And here you have your little bacon pieces. But there is a twist to this. I did something a little bit extra just to keep it from looking like gummy pieces and to make it look more like crispy bacon. So I put these in a saucepan with half sugar, half water, with a little bit of red food coloring and just a touch of brown and maroon food coloring. I let them sit in there for about a minute. I took them out, placed them on a pan, put them in the oven at about 350 degrees, and put those in there for about maybe 7 minutes or so, but keep your eye on them. They will burn because this is sugar on top of sugar, so be very careful. But you want to let them cool and you want to break them apart, and this is what your bacon will look like. It'll look so cool. It'll look just like bacon. Oh, they're sticking together a little bit. So now I have my pizza back over here. I have my toppings all lined up in the order I'm going to put them on. And I have my torch over here because my cheese did it cooled down a little bit. And I just want to make it a little bit softer so I can place my toppings back on here. This is what's going to make our toppings stick. I'm just going to use a little bit. I'm going to go in little sections at a time so that way it doesn't dry. I don't have to keep torching it. So you don't want a burnt cake. Oh, sorry. You don't want a burnt pizza. There we go. And now we can place the final pepperoni right in the center. We have all that pepperonis on our pizza. This is looking so good. I can't say it enough. I know I keep saying it over and over, but this looks amazing. And now we can add our next ingredient, which is our olives. I am so excited. Whoops. Every single bite has got to have some toppings. So don't be afraid to add toppings to your pizza. Now we can add our green bell peppers. Now we can add our red bell peppers. And now we can add our bacon. I'm gonna place these on there. I wanna make sure I get every single spot. So here's our final pieces of bacon, our final toppings on our pizza. Where should I put the last piece? I think I might place it right here. And there we go. Here we have a pizza cake, or a cake that looks like a pizza. This is just giving me Food Network all over, written all over it, just Food Network Imposter Challenge. I love imposter cakes. This looks amazing. I am so happy with how the crust turned out. You have I'm gonna go Food Network style. You have the crispy crust, you have the rich tomato sauce, you have the melty, cheesy cheese, you have the toppings, the pepperoni, the bell peppers, the olives, the bacon. You have everything on here, and it looks amazing. Now this wouldn't be a proper Taylor Thyme episode without cutting into this pizza. So I have a real pizza cutter that I'm going to use, and it wouldn't be authentic if we didn't use a real pizza cutter. So I see the cake underneath. I almost forgot it was cake. And now we're gonna taste this pizza pie. Hopefully you can see all the layers with the cheese and the marinara sauce and the toppings, pepperoni, crust, everything. So now we're gonna try this. Woo. I forgot it was cake. This is delicious. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you next episode. Oops. Bye.